Welcome to Live From Your Heart. I'm your host, Les Paul Klein. For 3 decades of my life, I've lived trying to get others' approval, not the truth. I lived to be accepted, but I wasn't real authentic. And what did it cost me? Pieces of myself over and over. I didn't realize I was even losing those pieces. This podcast, it's for anyone who knows deep down that they've been living someone else's version of their life. And you're ready to come home to your own heart and be real and be authentic. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. It's possible to reclaim your own heart. So every week we're going to talk about reclaiming that identity and healing old patterns and finding courage again and finally living from the truest and most grounded place inside of you, your heart. This isn't therapy. It's not self-help. It's just a real huge invitation for you to come and learn how to live a real life from your own heart. So let's jump in. If you've ever said, I don't even know what I feel anymore, this episode's for you. Yeah. I don't know what I feel anymore. I remember a time, um, several years later after I made my decision to live from my own heart. Um, and I had gone through a divorce. That's a whole story in and of itself. And, um, there was a time and a place where I'm single again and I'm in a new city. I'm trying to find myself. I'm trying to find my heart. And I, uh, I found myself in a place where I didn't know what to feel. I knew looking back, I should have felt something, but I didn't know what to feel. I was so lost in this. Um, it was a process that I was going through. And honestly, this is really kind of what took place. I was moving from a false self to find my real self and live from my own heart and not a life that was mapped out and dictated by my parents. And so I'd always trusted them. So now I don't anymore. I'm not trusting that feeling anymore. And I was confronted with this guilt and this shame over some choices that I had made around my family, my wife, and going through divorce. And I found myself in a city in the middle of the country where um, there was a church and a pastor who um, was familiar with my father. Oh, yeah. So you know exactly what I did. Yeah, you could almost write the story. So I went to see this pastor and I gave him the bulk of my story. And I guess the reason I went, I was looking for answers in the places that I'd always sought answers. And for me, that'd always been God and the church that I grew up in. But here's the problem that I didn't calculate was I had moved away from trusting that church. And as I said in a previous podcast, my father really represented God to me because he was not only my dad, but he was also the figurehead of who God was to me. And that's much like what many people experience. It's not unusual. So I went to see this guy, and oh my gosh, when he got done with me, and I walked out of that building, and I got into my car, I can tell you I was more lost than when I had walked in. I had been beat up. I had been judged, and I was required to confess my wrongdoings and beg God to forgive me. Now, for a lot of people, you may be confronting what I just said and say, well, that's Paul. That's kind of what the Bible says. I don't disagree with that statement. I disagree with the methodology because when Jesus in the Word um, reached out to the adulterous woman at the well, what did he offer her? In life. He didn't offer her judgment. He already knew. He already knew her, and he offered her freedom. Well, I'm going to tell you that day I didn't get offered freedom. Okay. I was offered what I would call a form of control, legalism. I was judged harshly by this man. And to be truthful, I was more confused about now what I'm feeling than ever before. Totally confused. And so I'm in this flux of, okay, I got to find some answers. I got to find some answers. I've got to find somebody somewhere that will listen to me. And I met this lady at a employment agency, and I was actually doing. They hired me to do temp work. They'd send you out on a temp job, and I did a bunch of temp jobs for them. I learned it's a great way to fill your days and make money while you try to figure out what it is you're going to become when you grow up. Um, but I found immediately somebody that I had a heart connection to. I mean, and the day I was in there, this lady, she was a salesperson for this company. She came out into the lobby. She sat down with me, and her empathy and her care, she sensed in my spirit the angst that I was in. And she met me where I was. Yeah. I was like this lost little puppy that she's rescuing from the cold. And honestly, she literally invited me into her world. And I found a safe place to verbalize all the things that I was going through and experiencing. And it was met with love and compassion not with judgment and harshness. And at that moment, I realized there are other people in this world who are thinking and feeling what I've been thinking and feeling, and I'm finding common ground. And so she became a real anchor for me. And honestly, if it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have gotten through those days and weeks and months to come in discovering what my heart was really saying. So our hearts, they don't speak in words. They speak in alignment. And that's exactly what I began to find was alignment. Okay. Um, I want to say some things about the heart and the mind right here because these are some of the things that I experienced. My mind was afraid, but my heart knew what was true. My mind was afraid. I was fearful. I was panicked. I was running. I was searching, but my heart knew what was true. I just had to find a place where it was safe to open up my heart and to learn how to live from it. My mind has logic. Okay. There's a logical process. I was born into a logical process. Didn't mean it was right, but it was the process I was raised with. Oops, 200,000 hours of parenting tapes. But my heart is going to give me direction. So the heart and the mind many times are in conflict. Yeah. And we've got to spend enough time sitting with it until we hear our heart and find the direction that we're supposed to move into. So, how do we do that? This is what I did. I learned this from my friend, and she used the word meditation. And I went, freak, that's weird. That's cultish. I mean, that's where I came from. But the reality was that she was saying, just stop the nonsense around you. This is before uh, the internet, folks. This is before the cell phones as we know today. I had a brick in those days as a cell phone, and we're talking early on. So there weren't the electronic distractions. But she's like, pause and listen. And she said, I want to show you what I do every day. She walked me through just pause in her life, and she would journal about what she was hearing. I was blown away. I gotta tell you, I was absolutely blown away by what she was hearing and how that she spent enough time in silence just to hear her own heart. So she journaled it. She shared with me days and weeks of journaling, her journey and how she got here. And what I learned through this was she had been at the same place many years previous that I had been in this legalistic, fundamentalist Baptist theology of works orientation to lifestyle. And she had gone through a divorce and she found no place in, in that culture because that culture is extremely judgmental and shunning, quite frankly. And so she sought out somebody that would care about her and love her and accept her and help her heal. So that's her journey. Her journey was the same as mine. I was just way down the road behind where she had got. What she showed me was the honest self-reflection. Okay. So you're silent, you're journaling, and now you're writing. And what you're writing, it's not really what you write, but that you write, that you pour out an honesty on a paper or a page, and you reflect on what is hitting that page. And you start paying attention to where the energy is. You start paying attention to what excites you, to what motivates you, to what moves you forward. And you start pushing away all the negativity. Because I can tell you that where I came from, there was nothing but negativity, nothing but judgment. I never forget, there was a lady that worked in the company I was running, and she came into my office one day. This was before this situation happened. She looked at me and she said, "You are so sad." She said, "And I can see your brokenness." She said, "All the girls from the office are going out to go bowling tonight at a place. Why don't you come with us?" And it's like, but it's like a girl's thing. She goes, "I think you just need us." So, I mean, I went. And, I was confronted with things that I'd never been confronted with in my entire life. But I just sat in it. And I'll never forget the feeling that my heart had at that moment. This is one of the first times that I felt this. It was a feeling of acceptance and love, not of judgment for where I was, but just compassion for where I was. I mean, it's like, okay, there are people out here that are just normal people that my peer group would judge for their lifestyle, but yet they're asking me to come and they're pouring their love and concern out in a compassionate way for me because they knew I was hurt from a divorce. So here's the signals of your, these are the signals that I got. It took time, folks. I'm going to tell you, it took some hard work and time. But the first signal that I really began to experience was peace, not turmoil, was peace. I can tell you where the turmoil was. You've already heard me kind of speak about it, where I came from in my peer group. But there was peace. I found peace. My heart found peace. And then my heart began to pull me in a direction of clarity. And as my heart pulled me into that place, it felt comfortable. It didn't feel like this the angst. And I can tell you that the peer group that I came from, that was always angst because I could never live up. But now my heart is signaling peace because I've discovered that I do have a God who loves me. He's the God of the Bible. I discovered this. He is the one true God. He's the God that has always been, you know, He created us. And as I found truth, I began to see God in a completely with a completely different heart. So that's that peace began to pull us forward. The clarity began to ease me into a place where I knew who to trust. And that voice, I began to live from that voice. Okay. And I just knew it's like, okay, this is where I need to go. This is what I need to. It was drawn clarity. And I had to make some decisions. I had to completely on down the road never involve myself in that community of legalism again and always guard my life that I would never let it back in. And I can tell you I was approached and opportunities came later on. Opportunities came to be in ministry again. In not in that quote unquote titled group, but in a titled non-denominational, but the undertone of the non-denomination was the same. And I kept myself unencumbered. Uh, I kept myself rooted in my heart, anchored to who I trusted, God that I was learning to trust. And there was a guy in our group some years later when I was back in ministry, working with single again folks. And he approached me and he said, "Have you read this book, Wild at Heart?" I said, "I've never heard of it." He said, "You need to read it." Because at the point this was presented to me, I was teaching on Sundays and leading about 500 single again people from a completely different heart, from a completely different place. Boy, was he right. I trusted what he said and I got the book. And that's more of the rest of the story as we go forward. Suffice it to say, right at this point in my story, I began to totally and completely understand from the author, John Eldridge, what I had been experiencing for my transition from living from the control of my parents to living from my heart, guided by my Heavenly Father. And there was a complete difference. John Eldridge wrote that book, Wild at Heart, and it literally was the story that I had just gone through. So when you live from that voice and you live from your heart, you know what to trust first. And you know how to act before fear shuts it down. You know how to act because fear is always going to be a driver if you've come from that world and that place. I hope that something I've said today on this podcast has triggered thoughts about your own life and your own heart. Hopefully, it'll motivate you to learn. You go through the process of how to hear your heart again. And if you're ready and you want help, that's part of what I do beyond this podcast is to help people walk a path that I've walked, that I have literally um, coached others to do the same. I don't try to get formal about my coaching. I really try to listen to you because listening is 80% of learning. So if this has really stirred you or any of my other podcasts, I hope that I hear from you. If you click the link down at the bottom in the show notes, you'll be able to connect to me. And I'll say more about that as we close the show. I hope I have spawned something because next episode, we're going to talk about the mask that we wear. and why we hide behind them. That's a tough one. Man. All right. You guys have a great, blessed day. It's Blessed Paul. I'll see you again soon. If today's episode stirred something in you, that's your heart speaking. If you're ready to go deeper into this work, let me invite you to come and join me in my Live from Your Heart coaching experience. It's a 6-month journey. I can take you back to the truth, help you learn your real identity, and uncover that emotional freedom that's yours to have. If you'd like to know more about my coaching experience, Live from Your Heart, you'll find the link down in the show notes. Until next time, folks, live from your heart. It's the only life that's truly yours.